all you queens and cryptids, and welcome to Queer Loathing, the only podcast that communicates entirely by carrier pigeon. I'm your host, Brett Bodie, and with me, as always, are my co-hosts.
Sorry, I actually do a pretty good pigeon. So
You do?
I just had to.
One of our carrier pigeons is here in studio.
No.
And the other one, Samantha.
Do your pigeon noise. Oh, okay. We'll work on it. Today, we're discussing a relatively new release, sort of an independent film, maybe flying a bit under the radar, called I Saw the TV Glow. So this is currently in theaters. We just saw it I think we all saw it at Alamo Drafthouse this past week. It's the second feature made by Jane Schoenbrunn, who is a relatively new filmmaker. They are non-binary, and their first feature went kind of like TikTok viral. It was kind of famous. That one's called We're All Going to the World's Fair, and it's about sort of an like internet challenge / creepypasta and social isolation. And I watched it, and that was quite good. And yeah, so we're here today to talk about their second feature, I Saw the TV Glow.
Which is, I guess, also about creepypastas and social isolation.
Yeah.
They got things to say.
They sure do. So we're going to get into it. I feel like regardless of how any of us individually felt about the movie, it was made for the three of us because it's made for trans and non-binary people, people who watch too much Buffy, and people who watch too much Twin Peaks. See if you can guess which host is which.
I feel attacked.
I mean, kind of. Like, I will be the first to admit this movie didn't really work for me.
I wanted out. I don't know a nicer way. I wanted to enjoy it. I really liked how it started. Okay, so quick overview of the movie.
Sure.
Before
This
I
one,
bitch.
there's no way we're going into any kind of plot details. This is going to be just freewheeling discussion of moments and vibes and analysis.
A lot of vibes. But
I mean, the movie's mostly vibes. Like,
Yes.
the plot is pretty simple.
Overview first. So we have Owen, who as a kid meets another student. I guess they're at like a student conference or parent-teacher
they're
conference.
voting.
What are they? They're voting? Oh, it's okay. I missed that part.
And he's there because his mom is like taking him along to like show him like, oh, the power of voting. And she's there because she's allowed to be there and doesn't have to be in her house.
I did pick up on that part. That was sad. But when he's there, he meets Maddie. So I guess another kid who's a little bit older. And you can tell this kid is probably neurodivergent and doesn't have friends. Like, you're getting that picture. And Maddie is reading this book that is based on a TV show. And I did kind of identify with Maddie in
She's
those
reading
moments.
an episode guide.
Yes, episode guide.
For the
Big
show,
ol' episode
The
guide.
Pink Opaque.
The Pink Opaque. He's trying to make friends, and he's heard about the show, and he's like trying to engage, and Maddie's like, if you don't know anything about it, like, fuck off.
I thought she was kind of trying to be nice within just like, this younger kid is bothering me while I'm trying to read. Like, she wasn't totally just like...
It took them a moment.
Yeah. So broad strokes, yes, they meet as kids. Eventually they get close enough, and so Owen's not allowed to stay up to watch The Pink Opaque because it airs at 10:30 on Saturday nights, and his bedtime is 10.
And his dad is really, I guess, like overprotective.
Yes.
Is the way it's sort of painted.
Yeah, I'll be interested to talk about how we read some of the parental figures and stuff like that. But yeah, so regardless, he's not allowed to stay up to watch the show, but he sort of lies to his mom to say, oh, I want to sleep over at my friend's house, some kid that he's, I guess, not even friends with anymore. And he uses that excuse to have his stuff so he can go over to Maddie's because she's invited him to watch The Pink Opaque with her and a friend. So he ends up spending the night and then kind of sneaking back and, going home with his sleeping bag. 2 years pass. They're in high school. They're still not close, but Maddie makes tapes for him of the episodes of The Pink Opaque and leaves them for him.
Still not allowed to stay up.
Right, because they meet when he's in 7th grade and she's in 9th grade. Then 2 years later, he's in 9th, she's a junior, I believe. And yeah, he's still not allowed to stay up and watch it. He's like, none of the other freshmen have bedtimes. And his dad's like, well, you do. And then so Maddie's like, he comes over to watch the Pink Opaque again when they're that age. Maddie's like, okay, next week we're going to meet back here and we're going to run away together. Like, this town is going to kill me. We need to, like, let's leave. And Owen is so distraught by the prospect of leaving that he kind of just like, he goes back to that kid's house and basically is like, I need to be grounded so that I'm not allowed to go because I can't leave. And then, but Maddie later disappears and she goes missing for 8 years. All they find of her is a burning TV set, like her TV set on fire in like the backyard. And then she resurfaces in Owen's life 8 years later.
Yeah, well, there's
and that's basically
spoilers,
yeah.
but whatever.
Right,
There's
but-
always going to be.
Yeah, and also my read on this, I would say, is that I think there was a story that unfolded, but it's not, the reality was never depicted on screen for a second.
Correct.
It was all
I
filtered
would
through,
agree with that.
like, I think some of the broad strokes did happen, but we were never seeing any kind of objective reality for even a moment in the whole film, was how I read it.
It's all from the perspective of Owen, who is portrayed pretty clearly as an unreliable narrator. Because even when he's saying stuff like, oh, it seemed that way to me then, and now I see it differently. And then he's like, and I have a wife and kids, and I'm happy. And it's like, bro, no, you don't.
Like, no.
Like, girl, like, you're so
Literally,
miserable.
girl.
You're miserable. But yeah, so there's like kind of the main story plot, and then there's the like, oh, but is it really? Like, because when Maddie returns, they're like, oh, actually, I am the character from the show that I put myself into, whose name is Tara, who's also the name of the character from Buffy, who is in this movie
Right.
as the
Yes,
mom.
it
Yes.
drove me nuts. Sorry, continue.
Why?
Because, I mean, Buffy fandom, don't get mad at me. I do like Tara, but it felt too, like it was trying too hard to add Buffy elements, like the mentioning Big Bad and some of the language. And I liked more of the parts where they would be like, the font of the Pink Opaque was the same font in Buffy. That stuff I liked. But like having like one of the most beloved characters, like, and you know you're like doing this for Tara from Buffy, it took me out of it. Like I just kept getting out of the movie because I'm like, Buffy. But when they said Big Bad, I was like, it's too in your face.
Or like Monster of the Week. But
Yeah.
But I don't I don't associate either of those terms with Buffy. And
I
I
was
never
gonna
watched
say-
Buffy because you say Big Bad about any kind of like overarching, but we said that in Overlord.
yeah.
We said that the Nazi guy was the big bad.
Yeah, Buffy
Sure, it
did
pinged
not.
in my head then too.
Buffy did not create a lot of these things,
No.
but it's probably the most widely popular version of this type of media. So basically, the Pink Opaque is a young adults, like, you know, teenager focused TV show that airs on Saturday nights at 10:30 p.m.
On like the Children's Entertainment Network or something. And it's clearly supposed to be like a Nickelodeon
Yeah.
analog.
Yeah, because it's the last thing to come on before Nick at Night. And the way
Yep,
they say
yep.
it is the black and white TV shows for the old people.
Yes.
Which I also enjoyed, frankly.
A lot of I Love Lucy. Loved it.
I loved watching My I Love Lucy. But that's the kind of ideas. It's like that gateway into something more exciting type of TV show for teenagers where there's overly complicated lore, so many characters, all the backstories, like, and he had only seen the promos for it because he had to go to bed before. But she was like basically a latchkey kid who has an abusive dad. And so
Stepdad, dad, yeah.
yeah, stepdad.
Stepdad,
Something
I think.
stepdad.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's like you have these two different kinds of kids and they're both drawn to the show. But I don't know, the way that I read it, which I don't know if that's what was intended by the director, is that this was Maddie's like special interest and that Owen, who is just desperate for connection and is interested in the show, it's his only social interaction that we ever see when he's a kid with anyone outside of his mom.
Yeah.
So like, I know that there's, and we're gonna get into it in a second, I'm sure, but like the movie has some very strong discourse that like the director will talk about with what Owen's character is really going through, but I totally misinterpreted it when I was watching it. Like, to me, it just read that Owen was maybe on the spectrum and socially isolated, maybe like aro ace or something is the way that I read that character. And then I was reading like a synopsis after the movie, and the director's like, oh no, like they're trans. It's a trans character. I don't know. It just didn't read that way to me, even though there was like some very obvious like bi-lighting.
Yes, I definitely noticed the heavy bisexual lighting in a few shots.
Brett, you like the movie the most out of all of us, so...
I haven't said how I feel about it at all.
I'm just assuming because Sam didn't like it. I was pretty middling on it.
I would say that I appreciated it more than I enjoyed it, but I did get a lot from it thematically. And kind of all varying levels. Like, I definitely picked up... I did know that there was some sort of... I didn't know the specifics, but I knew there was some sort of, like, potentially trans allegory element to it. So I went in knowing that. So I definitely read it on that level. But I think to a larger extent, I read it more as like it was almost a cautionary tale of developing your identity through identification with media rather than doing the hard work of self-actualization.
Yes.
Yeah.
Rather than having those hard conversations with yourself, you're just like, I like this character and that's me. And when I watch it, I can feel the way I like to feel. And that's as far as I'm willing to look.
And that's where I think the movie was most successful, in my opinion. Like, there's a great moment where Maddie has finally returned and is now Tara is now Tara from the Pink Opaque, claims that, the final episode of the show basically ends on a cliffhanger where both of the leads, Isabel and Tara, have been buried alive with their like hearts cut out, and that they're empty. And the show gets canceled after that. And so what Maddie is saying is that actually we are those characters in real life. We are in the Matrix, which there were definitely Matrix references all over this. We're in the Matrix, and we need to bury ourselves alive in order to go back to our real reality. And it's like, to me, as someone who, I will admit, has never really been in a fandom like that. Like, I've never had that kind of connection. Like, I like a lot of media. I'm a big fan of a lot of media, but I don't interact with media like that. However, I have encountered a lot of people in my life, especially online, who do interact with media like that. Brett and I see them at the horror convention when we go there. Like, when I'm on Reddit, I'm in my little communities, I see people kind of taking things a little literally. There's this great scene where Maddie's giving this speech in the little blow-up planetarium, which, again, like, to me, it just felt like it was trying too hard, but it was very pretty. And they're giving this speech about working at, like, Build-A-Bear. Like, I ran away, I got to, like, Phoenix, I worked at a Build-A-Bear, and I was putting stuffing inside, and obviously this is, like, an allegory to, like, filling yourself with nothingness to, like, not feel or something. And it's like, okay, like, I get it. Like, getting away from the physical location, if you're still not going to engage with reality, is only so helpful. And I do think that's probably the best message. And I think it's probably the message more than the trans allegory stuff that made this movie so effective for a lot of people. Because, like, I'll read reviews of this movie and they're like, damn, like, I want to kill myself now. Thanks. Like, they're like, it feels so personally attacking to them. Yeah. Which, like I get that side of it. But I feel lucky that I cannot relate in that way. Like, but that is the part that I thought worked the best. Because the trans stuff just felt a little messy to me, which it is messy. Like, yeah.
Well, I guess what was confusing for me is I was like, okay, I get it with Maddie, and then with Owen, I was like, are we hearing what you want or what Maddie's putting on you? Because that's where I was like, I want a little more clarity there. Because I can clearly see Maddie going through their own self-discovery. But with Owen, it seemed like he was just trying to understand not necessarily the world, but like how he can be in it. Like, he seemed so... My little heart was breaking for Owen the whole time, which I think was a big part of it. But, yeah.
Yeah, and I definitely understand what you were saying, Sam, about the explicit Buffy references taking you out of it. I never watched Buffy, so I didn't have that. I mean, obviously I knew that it was a reference. There were plenty of references to Buffy, but I didn't catch any of the specific ones. I knew Tara was a character in Buffy, but that didn't mean anything to me besides that. So I was not taken out by those types of things. However, I was very taken out by the appearance of Phoebe Bridgers, the singer-songwriter, when she appeared, because it was clearly her voice, but it was not her singing. I don't remember who was. It's another musical artist, but I wasn't familiar with her. But a second I heard, because Phoebe Bridgers' voice singing the line, "I saw the TV glow." So it was like a title drop and like a celebrity cameo. And I was just like, oh, I'm fully yanked out of it right now. I just like, I don't know. And I was like, also, we have real Phoebe Bridgers. She's like relevant now in 2024. This was not set in 2024, but she's credited like as herself.
It's set as the 90s. In the 90s, right? Like
it's
late
like 90s
90s.
and early 2000s, I think, in the time skip, the 8-year time skip.
And that was a Buffy reference, because in Buffy, they hang out at like a bar, and there's always like musical acts that are just lingered on for a really long time, like a little music video. Yeah.
I would just like to say the musical act also, to me, was a Twin Peaks The Return reference. I didn't know any music in Buffy, but the end of like every episode of Twin Peaks The Return ends with a full musical song, like by a different artist, and it's at the Roadhouse or the Bang Bang Bar, I think it's called, and it just plays out in its entirety kind of over the credits. And that was what seemed like Double Lunch, the name of the bar, I guess, or where the bands played. Seemed like a reference to like Twin Peaks, where it's like there's the Double R Diner, there's the Bang Bang Bar. It's all about duality, so it's always two. So Double Lunch definitely felt like a Twin Peaks reference to me.
For me, the movies that this movie made me think about was, have you seen Horse Girl?
Yes.
It reminded me of Horse Girl.
Yeah, I see that.
It reminded me of I'm thinking of ending things, not literal storytelling where it's like you're feeling the vibes of their despair, like especially at the end. Like they both sort of end in this misery porn kind of surreal thing. And then the last one, which is my favorite of all of them because it is the most like literal storytelling, is Saint Maud.
Sure. Yeah.
Like this kind of, because they're all movies where you have a really unreliable narrator giving their perspective, and you as the audience can kind of take their word for it. I think Saint Maud does the most like breaking that wall where you can kind of see the other side a bit more than maybe Horse Girl or In Thinking of Ending Things or this movie. And I like that. I just felt like all of those other movies I liked more. I was like, man, remember Horse Girl is like what I'm thinking to myself while I'm watching this movie where like, I don't know, like there were things that took me out of it too. Like on my Instagram, I get a lot of these like creepypasta sort of like short videos, and all of those horror videos I get have that exact same style of like creepy horror as the Moon Man in this, or the ice cream.
Mr. Melancholy.
Mr. Melancholy.
There's the Big Bad. There's the Moon Man, and then Ice Cream Man.
But I liked when it was Mr. Melancholy, when he was like in the distance, kind of cheesy, like someone's face just stuck in cardboard, looking angry. Yeah. But at the end, they kind of have like his interpretation of it as a real thing, and it's like scary, surreal, like kind of melty, and I'm like, oh, that's like the shit I get on my Instagram. Like it just felt kind of cheap to me. And I know it's an indie movie and all that, but it kind of took me out because I was like, oh, it's like a creepypasta on my Instagram.
But I also did like the difference of seeing Mr. Melancholy as how they saw it, or how he saw it as a kid, and then as an adult, it's like, oh, it's not actually as scary as how I had in my head. Like, what was it? Just like a, you know, like it's just a guy in a mask. Right. Like that's all it is. But like when you're a kid, you're like, oh, this is fucking frightening.
But it's not even just him being a kid. It's like him interpreting it as if it's real in his life. And I do want to talk a little bit about Mr. Melancholy really quickly.
Sure.
Because Mr. Melancholy is like his dad, right? And so the first time you see his dad, I was like, is that Stone Cold Steve Austin? But it wasn't. It was Fred Durst.
Yes. Of
What, Limp Bizkit?
Yeah.
Yeah, it just made me laugh because I was like, is that Stone Cold?
Sure is.
And it's not.
It's not.
Or sure is Fred Durst, excuse me.
Sure is the other guy we said.
Sure
Fred
it's
Durst.
not. But I think, I thought it was him that was Mr. Melancholy. I don't know, like with the face that was stuck. It seemed like that's how he was portrayed. It had that sort of vibe where...
It definitely, even if the same actor didn't portray it, I felt there was definitely an allusion to the dad is
in
Mr.
his
Melancholy.
life,
Yeah.
his dad is the big bad who is keeping him in this reality. And I do wish we had had more time with his dad to really understand that more because we get so few.
Well, I think it helps us get the distance that he's feeling too, because like we're not brought into it, so it's like.
And I liked that it wasn't explicit. I see what you're saying, and I think in some ways it definitely could have benefited from more clarity. But I did appreciate the artistic choice to show like none of that because he has like 1 or 2 lines.
He's like, isn't that a girl show? And that's like all he says.
Yes. And then like, and at one point we see the mom comes home because Owen has asked her, can I sleep over at this guy's house? She's like, yeah, you have to ask your dad. And he was like, can you ask him?
Yeah.
And mom comes in. She seems kind of apprehensive. She's like fidgeting with her keys and kind of like takes a breath before she turns and goes into the TV room to ask the dad for like if Owen can sleep over. So we're definitely given hints that like he may be abusive, physically, emotionally, we don't know. But truly, like we just know he said, there's bedtime. Isn't that a TV for girls? And that he watches TV late at night. And I kind of enjoyed that it's like, how much is this man actually keeping Owen from this journey of self-discovery? And how much of it is just Owen over-identifying with the characters in the show and being like, oh, well, that's why I can't be happy because Mr. Melancholy, aka my dad, is keeping me from it. When it's like, he has that whole speech on the bleachers about how he's empty or he doesn't know what's inside and he's afraid to look. And so I would say that I kind of, even though it's very weird in a movie and was kind of difficult for me to reconcile, I was very interested in seeing, I don't know if I've ever seen such a passive protagonist. He is like the opposite of a hero's journey. He does not self-actualize. He doesn't really do a damn thing. The only things he actively does is run away from other things.
Yes.
Which I thought was interesting. And in terms of like both the trans allegory and just broader self-actualizing, he shows that like some of the inertia that I think some of us feel when we do feel stuck. Maybe we know we could look deeper or make something of our lives, just figure out our wants and desires. But instead we just kind of sit back. We're kind of are in the passenger seat of your own life. And I thought he was such an amazing depiction of that type of person, which you never see as a lead character.
All right, let's take an ad break.
Question for you. When you want stories from your parents, what do you do? Do you say like, can you tell me the story? Can you write down the story?
This has never happened to me in my
Okay. Well, it's happened to me.
Okay.
So
hey, Sam, what do you do when you want to ask your mom a story?
This episode is brought to you by just get your parents to email you whatever story it is you want and don't get Storyworth because...
Did you get Storyworth?
Uh-huh.
What's Storyworth?
Storyworth.
I've seen it advertised on other podcasts.
Okay.
Yes, a lot. And I stupidly told my mom about Storyworth and was like, Mom, you have a lot of stories that I actually do want to remember. And, in the moment you're telling me and I'm like, I don't want to hear it because it's not the time. So she gets excited and is like, for my birthday, get me Storyworth. I didn't. So she goes, for Christmas, get me Storyworth. And I did. I set that shit up. I got her Storyworth where you...
Let me tell you what Storyworth is.
Okay.
Or you tell.
So
it's your ad.
What you do, it's my ad. So what you do is you sign up for this thing and it gives prompts. So you buy the subscription or whatever the payment is, and then it'll send prompts to the person to say, hey, tell us about a time you did something interesting in high school that you really want to tell me. You can either do the canned ones or you can write specific ones.
Okay.
And then it'll go like weekly or whatever you want. So
And
they
the person
can,
writes it down, responds
correct.
to the email,
And
I guess.
Send it in, and then you can compile it into a nice little booklet.
I see.
Of stories. And I did this, and I believe my mother has none of them after keep asking me to set it up. And so now I've reverted to, Mom, I really do want the story. Can you email it to me? And it works.
I don't understand. Sorry, I'm eating a croissant.
Croissant?
croissant.
Croissant?
I'm eating a croissant.
Croissant?
I'm eating a crescent. Wait, so it was a scam, or she just didn't answer the prompts that were
It's
sent
not
to
a
her?
scam. It's a thing. She just didn't answer them.
Oh.
But she really wanted to. I love her.
So she scammed you.
She scammed me, but but my money's gone to Storyworth. So you're welcome, Storyworth.
Yes, she scammed you on their behalf.
Correct. And so so this this episode is brought to you by just get your parents to email you and save your money.
Noted.
Well, use offer code, I don't know what
Email
Storyworth
me.
is, for 20% off.
20% off emailing me. Bye.
See you after the break. Welcome back, everyone. Hope you enjoyed your offer code to story time.
Not Storyworth.
Story worth. Or not. Or email, I guess, was where we landed on
Yes.
that.
I mean, it sounds like you could have just told your mom that you got Storyworth and just sent her emails from like a new Gmail and saved money.
But then you'd have to make the...
I still have to do
yeah,
it,
she'd
is
have to
the
make
issue.
the booklet. Yeah,
I see.
I understand. I hope it was a learning experience for
It
you.
sure was.
Great. All right, let's get back into I Saw the TV Glow. So anyone have something
Yes.
burning they'd like to... Great, no?
I have nice things to say because I feel like I've been coming off as kind of mean on this movie, and I did not dislike this movie. It just wasn't something that I wanted it to be better than it was. I had heard it hyped, and it was fine, honestly. But there were some moments that I do want to shout out as being genuinely very funny. Because there are genuinely, in this miserable movie, that you come out of this movie like, I hate society.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's how I came out of it. I was like, God, our society is so awful and broken.
Oh, yeah, well, that last sequence definitely highlights that.
Like, the way that our society treats people, especially people who, again, like, do not fit into what society wants people to be, is devastating. However, there's some really funny lines in this. So one of them that I like laughed out loud at, which I could do because I was alone in that theater. I could do whatever the fuck I wanted. Even the waiter just like noped out.
Yeah.
She was like, I'm not getting a buck out of this person. I was like, I'll have a water, thanks. And then I never saw her again. There's a line when Owen first goes to Maddie's house and there's like another girl there. Abigail or whatever.
Yes.
Who they end up not being friends anymore because Abigail like outs her to the school. But there's a very funny moment where Abigail's outside smoking and Owen's just like staring because that's how Owen is. He's passive.
Yeah.
He just watches the world around him without engaging with it. And Maddie's like, you can go out there if you want. And he's like, oh, I don't smoke cigarettes. And Maddie's, they're not cigarettes. They're Black and Mild. And I laughed so hard.
I also laughed at that.
Because shout out to me and my girls in high school. We used to go to Cafe Brazil.
Yep.
We were like, juniors, like about that age, like juniors, seniors in high school. We would go to the Cafe Brazil, like in downtown Dallas. Like we'd sit around and smoke fucking Black and Milds with like wine tip or like Honey Dutch cigars or Swisher Sweets. And we thought we were so cool. We weren't, and neither was Abigail.
No teenager smoking that stuff has ever been cool,
No.
but we all feel cool
Yeah.
at the time.
And it just captured that moment where I was like, okay, like this movie is pretty funny. So I just wanted to give that moment my big stamp of approval because I did laugh out loud.
It was
I'm glad
pretty
you
great.
did, because I did forget about that until you started. As soon as you started, I was like, I know the line, and it was actually hilarious. Let's talk about the things I found most upsetting / horrific. How about that? 'Cause it is.
I love a little list.
Well, I think it's what I said to Sam right after. I was like, the two most horrifying things in that movie were when Owen spits into his cotton candy.
Yes.
And it just like dissolves a hole through it because his mom's like, I just always feel like you're so far away and I have cancer and I want to talk to you. And he's just like fully silent and dissociated. And then he just spits on his cotton candy and she's just like,
She's like, oh, my little health scare, but she's actively dying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like she dies
And he knows.
shortly
Yeah.
after that.
right. Yeah, so that was one of the most horrifying things was spitting on the cotton candy. And the other most horrifying thing was near the end when they've sung the worst happy birthday song you've ever heard in your life 17 times. And then the guy says, one more time. And that one more time really got me. I was like, please stop.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Then I was going to go on a more serious note of something I actually
Well, I want to
found.
ask you guys
Please.
a really serious question.
Oh, no.
Have you ever had to work a children's birthday party?
No.
I have.
Oh.
And it is truly the worst. As an adult, I had to run children's birthday parties. This is when I was doing event stuff at a certain place that you guys know I worked at that I hated working there.
Yep.
And one thing that we offered was like children's birthday party packages. And because I was like the most competent person who was always there, they're like, put Mel in charge. And it really is like you want to just start screaming. So I will say that one I could totally relate to Owen's feelings there of just wanting to just start screaming in the faces of all the kids and their parents
crawling
and
out
your
of your skin.
coworkers and cutting yourself open in the bathroom and then crying.
I can't ask you for help on Redacted's next birthday.
Why would you ever ask me to do that anyway? I will say that I have carefully crafted a reputation for myself as not the person to ask for help to set up your kid's birthday party.
But you do show up.
Yeah, but I forgot to bring Redacted a gift. I brought you
Brought
booze.
me a gift, and that was great.
That's fine.
So, that's fine.
But anyway, yes, I thought that captured a moment of like just having a shitty job, like as an adult, where you find yourself doing something that is super duper debasing. And that's where the movie ends for Owen is like after high school, Owen gets like a shitty job at the movie theater and then the movie theater closes down and then he gets a job at like the fun center and it's just like the shittiest jobs. And that's, what society deems as like that's like most jobs are just like shitty retail customer service, food service type jobs. And I've had the pleasure of I think we all have had the pleasure of working some of those jobs.
Indeed.
Beautiful retail experience.
Yeah. Would not recommend ever working at a kid's birthday party.
Yeah, I did food service. I was a server. I would say of all these, that's probably can be the most bearable. I mean, it still fucking sucked, but
I'm just not meant to work.
No,
Period.
my destiny is to be a person of leisure.
Yes.
Leisure and opulence.
Me.
But yeah, so I guess since you brought that up, let's talk about how it ends. Because I think that is sort of a big final note that it goes out on. It's sort of there's a flash forward to Owen. He's now, old, but I don't think any of that was even kind of real in the context of the story. Because his coworkers are the same age as they were at the movie theater. And he's and he's so old.
Yeah.
Like, it was supposed to be 20 or 30 years later, but he's like a frail,
I did
elderly
not
man
even
who's
pick up on
falling
that.
apart. So I was like, this is, whether or not it happened, it's clearly depicted very metaphorically. They're singing endless happy birthdays and this, you've seen it, the kid's birthday room. It's set off from the main thing. It's just probably horrible green walls and
The lighting is bad on purpose.
Yes.
It's good insofar as for the movie, but it is horrendous to look at.
yeah, I thought they depicted it perfectly based on what I'd seen. And somewhere in those happy birthdays, Owen just starts screaming. Just primally yelling and screaming. And what does he say? He's like, I don't want to be here. It was something like that.
I
don't want to be around anymore.
I have too much shit on me. I don't want to be around anymore.
What's that? Is that I think you should leave?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right. I think you should leave.
But yeah, so he's screaming, and then the screaming passes and he starts apologizing. He's like, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry
Ignore me.
about earlier.
Ignore me. But he's still in the room and all of the party guests are frozen.
Right.
So it's very out of time. I took it as he's screaming, he's desperate, and no one can hear him in a more metaphorical sense. But yeah, he's so decrepit. And then he leaves from there, he goes into the bathroom. He's sitting on the floor and he pulls out a box cutter and he takes it to his chest. He cuts a vertical line through his torso. And then he goes to the mirror and looks inside. It's a very similar image to the Suspiria remake.
I'd say I would be remiss if I did not bring up the Suspiria remake in an episode of this podcast, because it's always Suspiria remake for me.
One day I might see it.
Yeah, it's a good one.
I think you'd like it.
And it's a reference to his conversation with Maddie on the bleachers earlier when they were in high school together, where he's like, I don't know what's inside of me. I don't think I like boys or girls. I think I just like TV shows.
That's what he says. I have it written down.
Yeah.
She says, do you like boys or girls? And he says, I think I like TV shows, which I liked.
Yeah, and there was some also language about, I think there's something inside, but I don't want to look at it. Like, I don't want to get in there and find out what's there. I'm too scared. So this is sort of like, he's finally, or maybe he has done this before, was kind of what I got. Like, taking a peek inside, seeing his true desires, what he actually wants for his own life.
Which is Isabel from the Pink Opaque, right? Or it is the Pink Opaque?
I think it was just kind of static. Yeah, it was like pink static. So I think that was kind of the implication. But he's just looking at it in the mirror. He seems happy at what he's seeing. But then he puts his shirt back on and he kind of goes back to, resumes his identity. And as he's leaving, there's like a shot of him walking out of the entertainment zone. And he's just like apologizing to just like random people playing games
who
and like
don't note him at all.
No, they don't even like hear him or notice him. He's like, I'm sorry. I'm an old man and I'm very sorry.
I'm going through it right now. I'm like, because my immediate feeling was like, I was like, I don't like it. I didn't like the movie. But now I'm like, maybe I didn't like the feelings I was getting, because man, am I feeling sad now. Well, like, I think I liked it more than I thought I did, but I didn't like the feelings I was left with.
Oh, yeah.
Which is more a me thing.
Well, there were times where I was tearing up in this movie. Some of them were just kind of vibes. It was like the tone of some of his conversations with Maddie, like related to the music. It was less about what they were saying and just the overall feeling. And then the biggest emotional reaction I had was near the end. I think it's when he's walking to the high school to meet Maddie, when she's like, we're going to go back into the Pink Opaque. Like, I've been there and I'm going to take you with me and we're going to like bury ourselves alive and then go back there. And he's walking down the street and in sidewalk chalk in big letters, it says like, there is still time.
There's still time. And
that really got me. And I started tearing up because I think it just speaks to so many just like regrets and like, until your last breath, it's never too late to, if not create and live the life you want, at least get to know yourself. Like, it's never too late to go on to have self-discovery. And I think that's the real tragedy of Owen's character, is that even though on some level he knows what he wants, regardless of what that is, you can read it as a trans allegory, you can read it as almost anything, but I think it's more broadly just living authentically, what he would like to be doing, the kind of life, how he'd like to present, all of that. And it's like, my reading was like, he's taken peeks inside over the years, and he sees it, he kind of knows, but he can't self-actualize. He can't create that. So he just takes a peek. It's like, oh, if only I could be that person. But then closes back up, puts the clothes and the almost lack of identity back on. And that was the real tragedy, was like, he really could know himself enough to know what he wants, and he can't even bring himself to do that because he's so scared and passive and broken. And
traumatized.
Okay.
Yeah, it's powerful because he says another line that I wrote down because I was in the theater by myself and could just take out my phone and take notes without feeling bad.
Oh, I take notes on the Alamo Drafthouse notepad.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
He said, or I think it was him who said it, what if I was someone else, someone beautiful and powerful? And I think that's why TV shows or movies or video game characters become such fixations for people who have trouble navigating society and having that self-actualization that we all deserve to have, right? Like, if he just wanted to be Isabel, like a beautiful woman, or if he wanted to be a cool person who talks to people, whatever he wanted, right? Like, he deserved to have that, but was too scared to go for it. And this movie really just sort of, I think, does a great job of navigating the isolation that we feel and that we navigate through media because it feels safe. One of the things I did not like about this message in the movie is I think that they were trying to do too much with this film, and there were too many threads. And I think if they had focused more on this idea of Owen not even having agency over his own fantasies because they're put on him by somebody else.
Yeah.
Because it's like Maddie saying, oh, you're Isabel. And like, don't you remember? And I think the implication is like, don't you remember wearing a dress and being beautiful and being confident and comfortable in yourself? Like, don't you remember that this is your identity? You're this person. And Owen doesn't even have like the agency in this movie to have like his or her own fantasies of what they want to be. And like, I didn't love that, but I get that life is really messy. And like, I'm coming at this from someone who came out as trans in my 30s, I think. Late 20s, early 30s. It's been a minute. Well, time really does be moving faster,
Yeah, I was like,
as Maddie
I
said.
can't fact check you on that one. My brain doesn't form memories. So.
I don't know. I did like some of the social commentary, especially at the end, because I do, and I've talked about this before with anyone who listened to me, largely my therapist, but it's like I, am driving on the highway and I'm looking around and I'm just seeing concrete and ads and, billboards that say, don't get an abortion.
Right,
and then
turn to Jesus instead.
Yeah, return to Jesus. And the next billboard's like, get veneers, you ugly fuck. And like, it's just like everything in society is trying to sell you something. There's no connection. It's all concrete. We're all separated from each other. Like, it's extremely isolating. And I think this movie does such a good job of capturing that vibe of like our society kills some of the people in it by the way that it's structured. Because like we don't see Maddie again. I think the idea is that Maddie perhaps killed herself or something.
Yeah.
She may have killed herself when she disappeared.
Right.
Yeah.
There was only one grave when they showed the grave outside. So this could have all just been, like Maddie could have been long gone. And that's so sad too, because if Owen's fantasy of Maddie getting away is her going to Phoenix and working at a Build-A-Bear, like even that is so fucking bleak. Like the movie's so bleak.
Yeah.
And
It
so,
is.
like I just have a note that's like, God, I hate our society is written as one of my final notes because it is incredibly isolating. And I'm lucky enough that like I do have a lot of real people in my life that I get to talk to. But I know that there are more than a few people our age and younger who just feel completely isolated. And maybe their only interactions are on fan pages on Reddit or Tumblr or something. And I'm not going to tell those people that that's not a worthy way of connecting with people.
Right.
Yeah.
And it may be their only opportunity to do so. But I do think there is something inherently empty about filling your void with the Pink Opaque or whatever fandom,
I do like that name.
The Pink Opaque?
Yeah.
Oh, I think it's so goofy.
It is goofy.
It's hard for me to remember and say.
The Pink Opaque.
Yeah, it's interesting because I definitely picked up on the sort of social commentary, and like I definitely agree with all of your points you just made about society. I have similar feelings, but I guess to me it was almost more like what I picked up on was like I was so sad for Owen, and I understood the reasons he was like that, but I was like, dude, like at the end of the day, it's you, and like you need to do the bare minimum of just even giving a thought to who you are and what you want, like. He didn't even get to the point where he ran into real obstacles trying to become that person because he just like never tried to become it. He was just like, he's like, my dad died and I have the house and I am a man and I'm doing the things that people do in society. And I was like, I get that there are immense pressures to be that person and that it may be impossible to create any kind of authentic life. But I'm like, you are to blame that you don't even know what it is that you wish you were doing.
Yeah.
To give him a little bit of credit, I was really happy when he did feel in danger and did need help. He was like, you gotta help me to...
Oh, after the sleepover? When,
yes,
when she wanted to run away.
Amber Benson, the mom.
He's like, you have to narc on me to my dad so he grounds me so I can't go run away.
Yeah. So I did appreciate that, even though he's just kind of walking in the world. Like when it came time to like, ooh, I can't run away. I can't do this. This is not what I'm doing. Like, help me. Like he did ask for that help. So
I agree. That was one of the most active things he did in the whole movie. But yes,
and I was
you're
like,
right.
okay, good. I'm so happy you're doing this.
And
Don't
he
go.
clearly regrets it.
Yeah.
And
Because it was just basically the only chance he actually had to do something else and be someone else, regardless of who that person was or if it would have been right. It was just like, that was it. That otherwise he's just stuck being passive ass Owen.
Yeah. I do think there was another really big laugh that I want to talk about. So there is that scene where he says, I decided to become a real adult, a productive member of society. And they're showing us his old like tube TV being like put out onto the curb. And then it pans to him getting just a big flat screen TV. And that's like in his head, him becoming this like adult productive member of society is getting the new TV.
Yeah, well, I read that as like, because that's when he's pulling in his LG TV, makes a point to show the tagline, which is life's good. Mm-hmm. And as he's touching the TV to bring it inside, he's saying, I have a family now. We never see any other people. I was like, I think that TV is his family.
It is.
Whether or not there are other people in his life, like that TV is his family.
I do not for a second believe him when he says he has like a family.
No,
now.
I think it was just like he got
a big TV.
He has his LG TV.
Because he can't perform the social stuff properly according to society, but he can perform consumption.
Yeah.
Which is something that
right.
is like also makes me crazy.
Yep.
And it's like that meme where it's like, oh, you have a critique of society, yet you participate in it. Very curious. But like, yes, like I am very aware of the fact that like I consume to feel better. We have all been conditioned to consume TV, buy ourselves, ooh, I deserve a little treat. Or like, I'm going to buy myself this thing so I get that dopamine hit of feeling good in that moment. Mm-hmm. And it's not real.
Right.
But it's what we've been conditioned to do. And it's what Owen has been conditioned to do because for whatever reason, whether it's gender dysphoria, being neurodivergent, just being awkward, for whatever reason, Owen cannot connect in society, but he can connect to media in a way that feels more real to Owen. Like, I don't know if I like boys and girls, but I like TV is like such a statement that I think does resonate with a lot of people.
Oh, yeah. I fully agree. Oh, I was going to say I kind of alluded to it earlier, but one of the most viscerally upsetting moments that I found like overtly horrific was Owen finally watches the finale, the cliffhanger episode. He's in his basement watching on his little TV. The cliffhanger, they're buried alive. Their hearts are in the refrigerator. And he tries desperately to crawl into the TV, and his dad is like holding him away and like not letting. But he's like desperately trying to climb through the screen while like sparks are flying, and just that like, I will say to Justice Smith's credit, I really felt the desperation in that, in trying to climb into that TV and like the trying to live inside this world, and maybe like, does that mean that he wants to be, what's her name? Like, not Isabel? Yeah, not necessarily, but it's like, you could read that. I kind of read it partially as a suicide attempt. Not like literally crawling into the TV, but, or also as a sort of alluding to coming out to his father, because dad was holding him back. And then the next scene is like, they're in the bathroom and there's like the shower going and he's like
throwing up.
Yeah.
But also dad's kind of like, almost, he throws up like, the pinkness or whatever.
So maybe like the Luna juice or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think it was. But so it's like, so is that dad like trying to clean up the transness? Is that just him caring for his son? Is that, it's just kind of like, I could read this in all different ways, and I appreciate
it. Probably was a suicide attempt, and he was like throwing up the pills or whatever. Like, because the way that his head is in that TV, it's like, again, it's like not anchored in reality. Like you'd be dead.
Right.
Like the TV's like shooting sparks everywhere.
Yes.
The dad comes in looking villainous, yanks him out of the TV as he's trying to go in, and then like makes him throw up into the tub. And then it's like, okay, back to my normal miserable
still here.
life. Yeah. And then the dad dies later, so Owen's alone, and that's why I think he then fantasizes about having his own family. And again, like performing society.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
So yeah, like I'm glad that this movie exists, and I'm glad the people who need to see that can see that. Because I do think that there are a lot of people where their existences can feel quite meaningless. And there is an emptiness that comes from filling your entire identity with, I don't know, like just crap that's been made for us to consume. And I, again, get it. Like, I'm not better than that.
No,
at all.
I know
Like,
what you mean.
I get that part of it. Like, that's the part of the movie that I was most connected to.
Yeah.
But it wasn't for me overall, this
Sure.
movie, at all.
I do want to take a moment real quick too, because we did not talk about Bridget Lundy Payne, who played Maddie. And I just want to say, I think they did a fantastic job in that role.
Yeah.
And acted their little heart out.
They sure did. Yeah, they were definitely a standout.
A good counterpart to Justice Smith's Owen.
And I think in a more conventional movie, Maddie would have been the lead character.
Yes.
Because they're the one that comes way closer to self-actualizing, or even just like making decisions and is an active character. And yeah, I thought that they portrayed that very well.
I have a note that says Ezra Miller looking ass person.
I know. Well, because Maddie appears in the grocery store with like the like apex, like the ultimate non-binary haircut.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which kind of is mirroring Tara's character.
Yeah.
That Maddie convinces themselves that they are.
They are Tara, yeah.
It's just like the gay haircut, and it's like they look great with that haircut.
Yeah, definitely suits them.
Yeah.
Yeah. We want to have me quickly share my little gender identity
Sure.
story?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm a cis man. I've
Ew,
cis
boo,
man.
boo.
and I've questioned, but it suits me. I feel comfortable with he him pronouns. I'm almost like, for myself, I'm almost like gender agnostic. Like, I don't care, and like someone could use kind of whatever pronouns for me, and I'd be like, yeah, like I feel like a man because that's what I'm used to, but it's not something that I consider like an integral part of my identity. But when I was a kid, like five or six, quite young, I guess I said to my parents enough times that I wished I was a girl. And I said it enough that they were like, well, let's look into this.
Oh.
So they brought me to a like child psychologist who I think specialized in gender issues. I didn't know what it, I was just we're going to meet this lady. And we played a game of Sorry, the board game, and talked. And afterwards, I think we had maybe a couple sessions. And she told my parents just like, I think he just connects better with the girls that are around his age and is better friends with them, and wishes it was just like even easier to hang out with them. But she was like, I don't think your son has any, like, is trans or has any sort of, like, this doesn't seem, at least for now, this doesn't seem like any kind of.
She didn't just say gay.
Right. She didn't trans me. She didn't gay me. I was not transed as a child. Although if you think about it, that's the exact situation that like boogeyman type of like, oh, well, this crackpot child psychologist gender lady is going to trans my kid.
Yeah,
and
it's not
like,
real.
No, because I was that kid and I was not transed because I was not trans and am not. And I was thinking that in regards to this movie, because I just wish that every child in the world could have that opportunity that I did, to have your claims of like gender identity taken seriously by your parents, looked into, like, what can we do to help our child with their gender identity? And I feel very grateful for my parents and how that all shook out.
Shout out to your parents.
Shout out to my parents. So I just wanted to share that and say that, if you're listening and you didn't get that, then I'm sorry. You deserved it.
Yeah, it is, I can say, shitty. I think there's also one thing that with this movie that is different than my experience as someone who has always had gender issues my whole life, that I do think that trans women go through a very different experience than trans men. Neither is an easy road, but like for me, when I was a kid, when I was really young, and I would literally, people be like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was like, I want to be a boy. Like, I want to be, and I would just think of like the most masculine professions. I was like, I want to be a football player. I didn't watch football. I want to be in the army. I want to be a soldier. Like, I just wanted to be masculinity, because that's what I saw as, like, I don't know, like, I was a little girl who everything I liked and enjoyed were things that were coded as things that I wasn't allowed to like, you know, and it was very frustrating for me. And I remember having this moment of clarity when I was in elementary school, where I would say, well, if I am a girl and what you're saying are things that are like when you say to me, why can't you like this thing that's girly? If I'm a girl, then whatever I like is girly. Like, by like de facto of that definition, if I am a girl, then everything I like is girly.
Yeah.
And shut up. Like, it just never was something that sat well with me. And then I was able to explore my gender a bit more on my own, you know, without support, and figure it out. But like, the tomboy sort of like label is something that is fairly socially acceptable in some ways. Like, there were definitely struggles that I would have with my family about like things I didn't want to wear. Especially when you're like in elementary school. I think the way that we want children to perform gender, we being not the people in this room, but like a society, especially in like the 90s and 2000s and before, where it's like little girls all have to want to be little princesses, little boys all need to want to be murderers or whatever.
The two genders, princess and murderer.
And it's like you have to pick, and actually you don't get to pick.
Right.
You have to be this one that was picked for you, and it never felt fair to me. And once I was presented with this opportunity to be something outside of that binary, it was fascinating to me. So yeah, it's like there are things about this movie where, like, I read this interview with the director, and they were saying how this way of being very internal and shut down and isolated is quite common for trans girls when they're like eggs in high school, and they're just not quite like
Do you know
out.
egg?
No.
Sam?
It's like when you're trans, but you haven't come out of the shell yet. So it's like people who are like very obviously,
guessing that.
yeah, they're like very obviously trans, but they're not admitting it. They're maybe not performing it yet. They're not accepting that identity yet, like within society or even maybe to themselves. And that's what Owen is. According to the director, Owen is an egg that has not hatched yet. And so like there are probably a lot of trans women who can relate better to Owen in that regard than someone like me who's, you know, non-binary, but I guess leans a little bit more masc in some ways. Who cannot relate to that because there was a valid avenue. It's an alternative avenue and it's not the ideal avenue, but like tomboy is a thing that is like,
It's relatively acceptable.
It's
At least
relatively
tolerated
acceptable.
by
Yeah.
society. Is.
I think
No,
my
it's a normal
parents
thing.
would have probably liked it if I was better at sports.
Well, same, but
they got a tomboy who was just like wanted to do musicals. It's like they just got like a twink.
the third gender. Princess, murderer, and twink.
Okay, so what else do we have to say about this movie? Go see it if you want. Maybe
after
don't.
listening to
better
this,
about it
after
now.
listening to this episode, you probably have a good idea if you're interested in seeing this or not. And either way, you're right.
Yeah.
Just go ahead, but no, it's gonna hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, shall we?
Is it gay?
Yeah, to
Is
our
it gay?
segment. Is it gay?
Is it?
We're gonna rate it on the gayometer.
Okay,
I'm never going first. Do not look at me.
Okay,
Brett.
great. Yeah.
Is it gay? How gay is it? Tell me.
So
That's the name of the segment.
Yes. So I would say that based on just like all of the identities of all the creatives that went into it, because it's overwhelmingly queer or trans or non-binary people who made this movie, both behind and in front of the camera, and then also explicitly deals with a lot of queer subject matter, even if it's more subtextual in a lot of cases. But also there is an explicitly, queer lead character in Maddie. I'd give it like a a perfect, like, 12 Luna juice boxes out of 10.
So oversaturated with gay.
Yeah, real juicy.
Juicy.
Real Luna juicy with gay.
Okay. I would give it 9 VHS tapes out of 10. And the only reason I'm not giving it full VHS tapes is because I want to leave the door open to something even gayer. But it's pretty gay. But I do believe that we as a society can get gayer than this.
I hope so.
I want to believe. Okay, Sam?
Okay, I think I've decided 10 human hearts in the fridge.
Out
Is that gay? Nope,
fridge?
just 10 human hearts in the fridge.
Great.
Yep. Yes.
Cool. So that's, yeah. Oh, also, I thought this, I didn't prepare you guys for this, so I may cut it. But I was thinking, what, like, we could do the queer part, but also the loathing part.
It's
what's
loathing.
the thing that I was just going to say, what's the thing about this movie or the experience of watching it that you loathe the most?
Oh, yeah.
That was what I was going to ask.
Okay, I'll go ahead.
Yeah.
I loathed how depressed it made me feel thinking about all the little Owens I've known throughout my life and how I now wish I could have done better, even though it's not my responsibility.
It's not
That's
your
what it's making me.
responsibility.
It's not my responsibility, but even a little bit. I don't know. So I'm taking this as maybe I didn't do well enough in the past, but maybe I can do better in the future.
You did as well as you could at the time.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. And so I loathe that feeling. Mm-hmm. But yeah. What about Mel?
Justice Smith. Next.
Phoebe Bridgers.
Okay.
Who I like, but that's what I loathed about the movie. Yeah.
So where can people find us?
I'm so glad you asked.
Me too.
You can find us on Instagram at Queer and Loathing Pod. That's AND. You can find Mel on Letterboxd.
I am Hater Tot, like a tater tot, but with an H. It's one word. I've been making lots of lists.
You can also find me on Letterboxd if you would like. If you've listened to this whole podcast and thought, wow, you know what I want next is more of that guy's shitty movie opinions, then you're welcome to it. I am at 666bitch on Letterboxd. That's the number 6, and then the word bitch.
I also am on, and I've done nothing on it. I think it's in I'm Samantha, but, we'll see if I do anything.
We also have an email, queerandloathingpod@gmail.com. You can send us recommendations, thoughts, prayers, fan mail, your fanfic about us.
Yes, your parasocial fanfic.
Your parasocial fanfic about us. But until next time... Ow.
There may not be a next time.
It wasn't me.
Mela suffered a debilitating injury. Until next time, I'm queer.
I'm Loathing.
And I'm Samantha.
Great job, everyone. Great job listening. Bye.